You open your eyes for the first time and congratulations. You're a believer. Not the harmless kind. The kind who reads palms at county fairs, who traces the future in star charts while housewives nod along. You've built a life on mysticism. Tarot cards. Crystal balls. The trembling hands of desperate clients. It's not much, but it's yours. The year is 1969. The Cold War has turned America into a nation of paranoids. Somewhere in Washington, men in gray suits are running out of ideas. They've already tried everything. LSD slipped into drinks at brothels. Electroshock therapy on psychiatric patients who signed nothing. Sensory deprivation tanks that turn soldiers into vegetables. MK Ultra, they call it. A buffet of horrors dressed in clinical language. But here's the problem. None of it works the way they want. The human mind refuses to crack on schedule. So they pivot. If chemistry can't break consciousness, perhaps belief can bend it. Enter MK Often. A project so absurd it sounds like satire. The CIA, the same agency that toppled governments and tracked Soviet missiles, now wants to study sorcery. Not because they believe in magic. God, no. These are Ivy League men with security clearances and leather briefcases. They believe in control. And control, they've learned, often hides in the irrational. That's where you come in. One afternoon, a man in a tailored suit appears at your door. He doesn't smile. He doesn't explain. He simply offers you a job, $300 a week, travel expenses. All you have to do is what you've always done: read fortunes, channel spirits, perform. You accept. Of course you accept. You think you're special. You think they finally recognized your gift. Lucky you. You're not a prophet. You're not even a consultant. You're a lab rat in velvet robes, and the maze they've built has no exit. Welcome to the alphabet soup of American intelligence. MK Ultra, MK Search, MK Often. Each letter a different flavor of moral collapse. Each project a new way to peel back the human soul. And you're the newest ingredient. Smile. They're taking notes. Your first week on the job feels like a fever dream. You're escorted into a windowless room somewhere in Virginia. Fluorescent lights. Across the table sit 3 men with clipboards. They don't introduce themselves. They just watch. Begin, one says. So you do. You spread your cards. You trace the lines of a palm they've placed before you. Disembodied, photographed, clinical. You speak of Saturn's influence, of Mercury in retrograde, of destinies written in flesh. The men scribble, they nod, they never blink. You're not alone in this circus. Other mystics orbit the same strange gravity. 3 astrologers now earn $300 weekly, plus travel. Long-bearded men in robes draw celestial charts, while behavioral scientists lean forward like children at a magic show. Gypsy-dressed women explain the architecture of fate to men who've ordered assassinations. The absurdity is staggering. And yet, the check's clear. One of your colleagues, a San Francisco astrologer with a theatrical flair, gets exposed as a fraud. Newspapers mock him. His reputation crumbles. The contract continues. You realize then what you truly are. Not an oracle, not a guide, a variable. The CIA doesn't care if your visions are real. They care how people react to them. They're not studying the supernatural. They're studying belief itself, how it spreads, how it bends, how it breaks. Every prediction you make gets filed in steel drawers marked classified. Every ritual, logged. Every failure, analyzed. You're generating data with your incense and trembling fingers. Truth is irrelevant. Perception is the weapon. You start to notice things. The way they watch your clients more than you. The way they measure hesitation, trust, surrender. You're not predicting the future. You're mapping human vulnerability. And somewhere in those locked files, your name sits beside chemical formulas and nerve agent codes. Profit and poison. Same drawer. You smile. You've learned to smile. They tell you it's a field test. You nod, because nodding is what you do now. You've learned not to ask questions. Questions make clipboards pause. Questions make handlers glance at each other with that particular silence. That means you've become a liability. So when they say United Nations, you simply pack your crystals. The year is 1972. You're escorted into the most diplomatically sensitive building on Earth. A glass monument to global cooperation. And your mission is exquisitely insane. Walk the corridors, sense the auras, raise your hand whenever you detect an evil personality. That's it. That's the assignment. Hidden cameras roll somewhere behind marble pillars. Agents in tourist clothing pretend to read brochures. Diplomats from 40 nations stroll past, oblivious to the mystics scanning them for darkness. You walk, you breathe, you wait for something, anything, to justify your presence. Nothing comes. No chill down your spine. No shadow in your peripheral vision. Just men in suits arguing about trade agreements and secretaries carrying coffee. The evil you're supposed to detect is either absent or dressed in very convincing bureaucracy. The experiment ends. No results. No revelation. But here's what you don't understand yet. The failure doesn't matter. They weren't testing your gift. They were testing logistics, coordination. How to film covertly in a diplomatic sanctuary. How to move an asset through hostile architecture without detection. You were the prop, the distraction, the plausible cover story if everything collapsed. One leak, one curious journalist asking why a medium wandered through the UN, and America's credibility shatters. International scandal, congressional hearings, careers incinerated. They risked all of that. For you. For this. And when it's over, they thank you with a handshake and a reminder that none of this ever happened. You don't exist. The cameras don't exist. The evil you failed to find was never the point. The point was proving they could try. You thought the United Nations was the peak of absurdity. You were adorably wrong. Somewhere in South Carolina, a university classroom fills with students clutching notebooks. They think they're studying cultural anthropology, fertility rites, initiation ceremonies, the symbolic resurrection of the dead. Academic stuff, respectable stuff. They have no idea the CIA is watching from the shadows, through a Boston front company called the Scientific Engineering Institute. With ties to Polaroid, of all things, the agency funds an entire course on sorcery. Not metaphorical sorcery. Actual necromancy discussions, ritual analysis, the mechanics of belief dissected under fluorescent lights. And you're part of the curriculum now. Guest lecturer, consultant, specimen. The labels blur. You stand before eager young faces and explain the power of symbols, the weight of ceremony, the way a well-staged ritual can bypass rational thought entirely. The students take notes. Somewhere behind a one-way mirror, so do the men in suits. They're not studying magic. They're reverse engineering faith. The audacity doesn't stop at academia. A formal request lands on the desk of a New York Monsignor. The CIA wants access to exorcism cases, real ones. Documented possessions, the church's most guarded spiritual records. The Monsignor refuses, not out of theology, out of instinct. He smells something rotten beneath the official letterhead. But the rejection doesn't matter. The attempt itself reveals everything. No territory is sacred, no belief too strange, no institution too holy if it promises a single insight into human control. You're starting to understand the shape of the machine you serve. It doesn't want your gift. It wants to know how gifts work, how humans surrender to mystery, how fear becomes obedience, how a robe and some incense can make rational adults kneel. You're not teaching sorcery. You're teaching the government how to become the sorcerer. December 31st, 1972, New Year's Eve. While America prepares champagne and confetti, director Richard Helms prepares an exorcism. 2 words. That's all it takes to erase you. Read, destroy. No explanation, no ceremony, just obliteration dressed in bureaucratic calm. Files that logged your every ritual, shredded. Correspondence with astrologers, incinerated. The sorcery courses, the UN experiment, the Monsignor's rejected request. All of it fed to flames that ask no questions. Sidney Gottlieb, the chemist who turned LSD into a government hobby, begs Helms to reconsider. Let the program live. Let the research continue. But Helms cites moral and ethical dangers, with the conviction of a man who's seen the abyss and decided to brick up the door. The occult branch dies that night. You receive no memo, no severance, no thank you for your service. One day, the checks simply stop. The handlers vanish. The phone numbers disconnect. You're left holding crystals that suddenly feel like toys, robes that smell like mothballs instead of mystery. But here's the twist that should haunt you. Months after Helms signs your erasure, experiments continue at Edgewood Arsenal. Military volunteers inhale nerve agents under the MK Often designation. The supernatural branch was severed, but the laboratory survived. They cut the mystic. They kept the poison. You were never a prophet to them. Never a consultant. Never even a fraud worth debunking. You were a question they finished asking. And the answer? Belief can be mapped, measured, manipulated. But it's cheaper to use chemicals. Less paperwork. Fewer robes. The legacy isn't sorcery. It's simpler and colder than that. When governments fear enough, they'll test anything. Nerve agents, necromancy, you. All variables in the same equation. Your name burned with the files. But the machine that used you? It never stopped running. It just learned to hide better.